Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om. Allah.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. And again this week we're speaking with Brother David O'Brien, who's a Salesian brother. In the past, last week, we went through how he became a brother and the whole Salesianality. Now there's some specialist things which David does because of his religious persuasion. David, Akrath. You're involved in Akrath.
I'm involved in Akrath, and I've been involved since around about the end of 2010. Akrath is the Australian Catholic Religious Against the Trafficking of Humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and an organisation that I'm not quite sure of how long it's been around, but I know that it's become a fairly a very strong organisation in terms of anti-human trafficking. Yeah.
But just before we go too much into Akrath, here you are, a Salesian brother, and you specialise in working with young people, as Salesians do.
Yep.
What led you to find yourself looking at this human trafficking? There was a story behind that?
Very interesting. In 2010, I went to the United States and did a course, a renewal course.
Yes.
In Santa Fe in New Mexico. Sangre de Cristo was the name of the place, which people would probably know associates with the mountains around outside of Santa Fe, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains.
Oh, okay, yes.
Blood of Christ Mountains, as they're known.
Yes.
We had a group of us. We were number 97. The group of number 97. There were 36 of us from quite a few different countries, and we did 3.5 months, 100 days,
100 days
together.
Right.
In that 100 days, we looked at spirituality. We looked at I suppose basic theology. We looked at spirituality. No, I mentioned spirituality, didn't I? Bible studies, theology, and justice was a very powerful part of that. We worked with a Franciscan, Michael Crosby, and he got me thinking, as he got quite a few of the people there thinking, and I felt to myself that I really needed to kind of look at something in terms of the justice side of things, even though I suppose working with children in the atmosphere that we do is a justice type thing.
Yes.
I just wanted to be involved in something else. So I felt I did I looked at what we'd done during the thing, and I thought about it in my head, and I thought, I need to do something practical when I go back.
Yep.
Something in terms of justice, and I need a practical not just saying justice this and justice that. I really need to get
some
a
action.
concrete example of that. So I had thought initially of maybe doing something with refugees, and that was kind of in my mind. Okay, right, I'll try and get back, and I'll try and see if I can get involved in something in terms of refugees. And then kind of thinking on that, and I guess talking to people and saying this, I want to do something in that area. I got talking to a person who was on the course with me. The interesting thing was she actually worked with refugees in Brunswick, So it was just down the road, and I didn't know who she was until we went to this course. We did this course. So that was interesting. But she said to me, when I sort of talked about the possibility of doing being involved in refugees, and it was in the back of my head as well. I like to think of it as, and I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone, but in my mind I was thinking refugees is a bit like Myers. There's a lot of people want to be involved, and a lot of people. It's kind of the flavour of the month, and yes. I'm not saying that it's not a worthwhile project, but it was kind of. But I wanted something perhaps not quite as visible. And she talked to me about human trafficking and said, "Did I know anything about human trafficking?" We actually watched a video, a DVD, I should say, talking about human trafficking in the context of the Mexicans in the US, and it was interesting because what I got from that was that there was a big effort to try and keep Mexicans out of America in terms of refugee type things. Yeah, they said the big wall that was set up, the people that try and stop them coming in over the border during the evening time and all that sort of stuff. That's right. And yet there were people bringing Mexicans, and still are, as far as I know, bringing Mexicans over the border in a car or in the back of a trailer or something like that, trafficked across to work with the rich, mostly the rich. No, I shouldn't say that, but with people who had power and so on,
presumably money.
And money to be used in various industries, including the sex industry and including domestic servitude.
Right.
So it kind of, I was looking at this video, shaking my head and saying, this is happening on this side, and this other thing is happening on the other side.
Yes.
And so I sort of came back with that thought that perhaps that could be an area to look at.
And perhaps that could be an area that we're going to look at after the break, because we're out of time.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Brother David O'Brien, a Salesian brother. David, you sort of outlined the fact that you had the refugees, but then there was the poor relation, if you like, which is this trafficking. Yep. So you saw the examples or heard of the examples in America.
Yeah.
What examples did you then trace into Australia? How did it come to be?
Yeah, well, it was quite interesting. I came with a vague thing of what human trafficking was, and basically listening and reading and talking to people, through ACRAF and that type of thing. I learnt that human trafficking, even though we think of slavery, which is what human trafficking is, as something which has been eradicated around the world. We think of the American thing where slavery existed among the Black African Americans, and Wilberforce eradicated slavery. But in actual fact, even to this day, slavery is still existing in different areas. Now, we know, for example, most people would say that they would have heard of slavery through the sex industry, through the brothels and through that type of thing, where women are taken from countries such as Thailand and so on, and brought out to work as women in brothels in that industry. Little not much is known about women and possibly men who are bought out as domestic slaves to work in houses and as maids and so on. Also, looking at the agricultural industry, fruit picking and so on, where people are brought out to help with fruit picking. I think even in Australia in the very early days, Kanaks were brought out to work on the cane fields in Queensland. But they've also been working on fruit picking in even in Victoria, in the north, up in around Shepparton and places like that on the Murray River. And trafficking, could look, you could say, oh yeah, but they are being paid for it. But are they being paid an award wage? Are they being looked after? Where do they stay at night? What happens to them? So the things like that. The building industry, building and construction industry is also another area, and even shipping and the dockers, down at the wharfs and things like that.
Right.
Some of them are in that area as well. Slavery.
The police would be on the periphery of this once you became aware of something.
Yeah.
What's their attitude to it?
The attitude has been fairly positive in terms of getting these people that are bringing people from other countries out to do slavery. In fact, at one stage, the Australian Federal Police had a unit which was involved, which was their job to look after, to the human slavery area. Unfortunately, finances being as they are, the department was cut. The finances to the department was cut, so they don't operate anymore as a unit.
Oh, that's very surprising. Fancy that happening.
Yeah. So, but as a whole, the police are fairly much onto it. Yeah.
Well, something like this would operate very much on information and intelligence.
Yep.
How does that flow?
Well, interestingly enough, there are several organisations, not just ACRAF, who are involved in this. The Australian Federal Police had the unit involved in it. They still have some part in it, even though it's not a unit devoted totally to it. They still have influence in it. The another organisation is called Anti-Slavery Australia, very much involved in slavery, anti-slavery. The another organisation, which is a very interesting one, is called Walk Free, set up by Twiggy Forrest, the mining magnate. Twiggy's daughter had brought it to his attention and said, I've seen what's happened. I know that human slavery exists and it's in a lot of industries. And she more or less said to him, you operate a big industry, the mining industry, and it might be a good idea to look at your industry and see whether there is human slavery involved. And he took that on board. So to his credit, set up Walk Free to make sure that there was nothing happening in his industry to start off with, and then to make people realise that it does exist.
Yes.
They have a internet page, a website, and they're pretty strong on Facebook and on Twitter and different things like that. So the information that they share fairly much throughout the media industry.
And it's sort of volunteered into those networks by people who know.
Yeah. There's a lot of networking done between all the organisations.
So with the, as you said, the sexual one pops up because it's in the press from time to time.
Yeah.
But if you were, say, on a fruit picking, how would the slavery work there? What would they be doing?
It's kind of it's like if you're in the fruit picking industry, there is a very small window. The fruit grows. The fruit needs to be picked within a certain time. If it's left a month, if it's picked too early, it's no good. It's it's not going to be. It's going to be too not ripe enough. If it's picked after a certain time, it's going to be dodgy. It's going to be rotten. It's left on the tree too long. So there's a small window. Yeah. So the fruit growers are saying we need to operate in that window.
Our window just closed. We're going to a break. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Brother David O'Brien, who's a Salesian brother. David, you were talking about fruit picking potential for human slavery there. One of the key issues is actually them taking their passports away, isn't it? So that they...
if you like, a way of knowing that someone is being taken as a human slave is the fact that their passport is taken off them. Passport could be a book with a number of stamps in it. To some people, to most people, to a lot of people, it's their identity.
Yes,
their identity is part of their passport, and that's what a passport kind of triggers is to most people. And to have your passport taken from you means that you have no identity. You can't go anywhere. You can't access a lot of things. And it's part of your life is taken away.
Yes.
And it's really the first indication that someone is
being
a slave, subject to slavery, because they have no identity. Their identity is taken from them.
There's a little bit of a specialist project that I think you're involved in as far as this is concerned. It was sort of an e-book thing. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited because a lot of things are happening over the last few days. Things have happened. In 2010, when I was in the States, a part of the course that we were doing, as well as the academic side of things and the other things that we were doing, we were taught a little bit about weaving, tapestry, and needlepoint, and that really got. I've always had this artistic kind of thing, and I'm a reasonable drawer, and I've painted done some paintings and different things like that. But I really was caught up in this whole idea of this weaving and so on, and it's become for me my niche in terms of art.
Okay.
Very, I've really quite excited about it and really enjoy doing it. Never realised that I had that until it was brought out of me, I guess, through the course. So basically, I thought I had done a whole lot of different bits and pieces, including some pattern, things that. What do you call it? Native American type things, and some Spanish Mexican type things. But I wanted to do something a bit more freelance, if you like. And then I thought I wanted to tell people about anti-slavery. What's it all about? How can I put it in a way that could tell people? Didn't want to write a whole lot of words. I didn't want to do. So I thought, well, maybe I could do something in needlepoint.
Right.
And so I had my ideas on a project of how it could work out. And I did a little bit of a plan, but I don't stick to plans very much. I'm more of a freelance. I'm more of a, when it comes into my head, I'll put it in, So I worked on a rough idea of how what it was going to be. I've called it 1 in 1,000 stories because it's one story. It contains high amount of fact, but also a little bit of fiction. And so basically it's a story of two girls in Thailand who read a paper, and in the paper it says, come out to Australia, you get a better life, you know, you get a job, etc., etc. And they're talking about it as young women do, chatting about, oh, wouldn't that be great, it'd be terrific to do that. And standing next to them is a man known as the agent. All of these people have agents that are working on behalf of someone else. And the agent says, look, I can make it happen for you. I can do it for you. So he brings them out to Australia. They meet Mr. Big, who is the man that runs it all. And Mr. Big takes their money and their passport. Bing.
It goes, yes. That's right.
And so then they sent to work as domestic slaves. And a lot of cases, they don't know that they're slaves. So that's the thing. That's another thing. They don't know that they're brought into slavery. They don't know that if they work in a situation like that, that they should receive money, they should receive, you know, time off, etc., etc., because that they only know one thing, what they've learnt in their, you know, and so they come out. They think that's how everything operates in Australia.
Okay.
So that so then the next part of the story is that there's a next door neighbour to this man that's got them working as his slaves, and she, now you could look at it in two ways. She could be a sticky beak looking over the fence all the time, what's going on now, or a concerned citizen. I like to look at it as a concerned citizen.
That's right.
She works out that they haven't been out of the house in the last few months. They've been indoors the whole time. She's seen them arrive but never seen them come out.
Right.
She gets suspicious, so she rings Crime Stoppers. The police come, they arrest the perpetrators. Now, as I say, it's part fiction, part fact.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't happen that quick.
No.
And a lot of times it doesn't happen that quick, but in this case, just to make the story work, that's what happens. It goes to court, and then there's the last panel that I put in has an Australian flag with a question mark on it.
Yes.
Saying where does it go from here? There's an apology needs to be made to these people, compensation needs to be made to these people. And then I have the various organisations that are involved in trying to make things happen to stop slavery.
Thanks very much, David. That sums it up. And the Australian flag with a question mark on it,
Yep.
you could take that lots of directions.
Absolutely.
David, thanks very much for the time.
You're welcome.
And the time that you put into Akrath. It's obviously worthwhile.
Yep.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu